You're live.
Hi, and welcome to our last week of the book club that's meeting about the novel Lassoed by Marriage. We have Angie Breidenbach joining us today, and today we're going to be talking about Railroaded by Love by Ross Zediker.
Hi, everybody. And I am so excited to be with you because this was a really fun novella for me. I love trains. My dad loves trains, or did love trains. And so when he passed, I ended up getting a huge collection. And I wish you could see, unfortunately, the bookcase is way down low. But I have got one whole shelf of train books and videos and history of trains in America, history of trains around the world. So it was really fun when Ross Zediker joined this collection of the Lassoed by Marriage romance collection, and her book was about train chapel cars. And of course it's a romance too, but part of the joy and just the enjoyment of reading some of these historicals is learning a little bit about history. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Rose. She has a day job, and so she's not able to actually visit with us today. I'm so sorry about that. But it's so wonderful that we get to visit about her. I bet her ears are burning. Multi-published author and Rita finalist Ross Zediker writes contemporary and historical inspirational romances and has over 80 publishing credits in the Christian magazine genre for children and adults. Rose works full-time at the University of South Dakota and writes during the evenings or weekends. She's a member of American Christian Fiction Writers and Romance Writers of America. And she's written this story called Railroaded into Love. Montana, 1895. Of course, you know that's going to get my Montana heart going. Molly is tainted by having an outlaw brother on the run and seems the least likely bride for a pastor of a chapel railroad car. Forced together by duty and to family and faith, can they build a life and a mission together? First of all, I just want to ask, did you all enjoy the book?
Yeah.
Yes. Very much.
Yes, very much.
What was your favorite parts?
I never knew there was such a thing as chapel cars. I think that's great. For those little towns that didn't have a church or an all-the-time pastor, I always wondered kind of how they got that. So that was neat.
We had a fun time visiting together, Rose and I, and another book club where she talked about these cars would be sent out as missionary endeavors in order to bring God to the frontier. And I thought it was so fascinating and fun. But some of the questions that came up that were really interesting, kind of the behind the story, behind the scenes type of thing, was how did they sleep? How did they eat? How did they baptize? You know, some of these things were really fun questions. And Rose was able to talk about the fact that the cars had pews, and I'm going to show you one here in a moment, but that they often had to do baptisms outside. So this might be where the chapel car would pull into the town or the frontier town with tents and everything around it, but the railroad's going through. And here in Montana, the railroad connected through in 1883. But there were a lot of mining camps. There were some big cities. So for instance, Helena would be a big city. And by big city at that time, her story is in 1895. I would say, I'm thinking off the top of my head with my own research here, that maybe the town was 30 to 40,000 people at the time. We had just experienced the silver crash of 1893, and which, by the way, is going to be flavored into the book I'm writing through this. The Montana had grown, having more women start to come, but still didn't have as many as other areas and states. And there were cities like Butte, Deer Lodge, Anaconda, and Missoula was up and coming. These were all kind of along the railroad tracks as you go out further west towards Seattle. But along the way as well, you would see these, maybe some tent cities or some mining cities, or if they came up to the railroad, they would come up to get goods, purchase goods, and then go on back down to their towns. At one point, one of the best cities that Montana hosted for a shorter time, it's now a ghost town with only a few hundred inhabitants, was Virginia City. It's a fabulous tourist town. Absolutely fabulous. And it had its own smaller railway, but they would have to come into the area. But that town started about 1864, right behind Bannock, which was one of our first towns, and is still, it's a state park here in the Montana area. So trains were important coming through, and then stagecoaches, the Pony Express type of riders, these kinds of things would bring a lot of the goods in and out of the towns into the main railroads. So in order for the people to learn about God, originally in Montana, we had the Catholic priests and missionaries like the nuns and things like that coming through and creating these gorgeous, you've got to come to Montana, because there are gorgeous missions all over Montana. And, yeah, oh, they're beautiful. And there's a few of them. One here in Missoula has been turned in. It's actually still thriving, and it's called St. Francis Xavier, where one of my friends has been a long-term priest there, and Father Rich, and he's just a very fun person to listen to, full of love and smiles coming out of his eyes like you wouldn't believe. These kinds of people, they would come and they would share the love of God. But they couldn't quite reach every frontier town, and so these train cars started coming. And if they could find a river nearby, which often the railroad going through Montana runs along the river, they would baptize in the river. They would bring babies to be baptized because there was a lot of Catholicism in the state of Montana, and they would come and get married. These are things that are just really fun, true history about this era of chapel rail cars. And I want to show you a little bit more about the chapel rail car. This one is called the Chapel Car Emmanuel, and it is from the Shepherd of the Hills Church on Vimeo. They've done a video for us, and I would like to show you what one looks like. You'll see the pews, you'll see the windows, and you'll get to see, please turn up your sound, and I'm going to turn up mine all the way so that we are sure to get as much sound for you as possible. And can you see that on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this is a chapel car. The other part of this is that inside these trains or these chapel cars were actually the living quarters for the missionary pastors and priests, because they weren't all Protestant and they weren't all Catholic. However, the Catholic ones were known to be a little bit more ornate. And even though priests couldn't marry, they still had living quarters that could fit 2 or more people. So it was fascinating. But can you see the back of the piano right here, or organ?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 2 to 3 people you could see could fit per pew, and they would pack these cars out. And then if they were packed, then sometimes they would have to take the service outside and do it out in hopefully the sunshine. Then they would go on along to their next stop. This would be a modern way of being a circuit riding preacher.
Get modern now.
All right,
Take your church.
sorry? What'd you say?
I said, take your church with you. It's always great.
You get people to come to church, take the church to the people.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. Bring it along.
Had kitchens and carried potable water with them in this train. The train had this train car had a potable water tank, so they could have cooking and drinking water and things like that along the journey, but not enough for likely for baptism. So you can imagine if there wasn't a pond, a lake, or a river nearby, they were probably practicing sprinkling versus immersion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so sometimes I think we forget about the necessity of real life in some of those theological debates. So here is it's just shy of 4-minute video, and I hope I'll check in and tell me you can hear it as it starts, okay?
Okay.
Over 100 years ago, a train named Emmanuel left the commissioning grounds of Denver, Colorado, and began a journey that would change a multitude of lives for the gospel.
Can you hear it?
Yes.
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 Today, it stands in Prairie Village, South Dakota, as a reminder to us of how the faithfulness of a few could impact thousands of lives for the kingdom of God. This car, Emmanuel, was built in 1893 and is now one of only 3 chapel cars built around that period that still remain today. Now, the year of 1893 was the worst possible year to build a train. The stock markets were down, the costs of the railroad were up, and at that point, there were only a few who dared to dream about what a railroad car might mean for spreading the gospel to the Wild West. Yet, at that exact time, and in such a period of financial turmoil, the Lord chose to send a faithful few across the rails in order to spread the good news that Jesus is the Christ. In the year 1893, the chapel car Emmanuel embarked on a journey that would visit towns along the Pacific coast, towns that had gone untouched by the gospel message. These places were exactly what you would see in Old West movies, filled with saloons, gambling halls, and thievery, and absolutely no churches. Cramped into the back of this train, pastors and their families moved from town to town, offering the gospel free of charge. And many responded to their call. Many accepted the Lord as their Savior and immediately planted churches in those towns to continue worshiping our Lord. This train, you notice almost immediately the beautiful woodwork and stained glass. But more beautiful still are the souls that were saved because of this train. It is because of this train, Emmanuel, that we are here today. 100 years ago, the pastors of this train planted the First Baptist Church of Van Nuys, California, the church from which Shepherd of the Hills was born. The name Emmanuel means God with us. For many, that was exactly what this train represented. It was the presence of God visiting these towns and leaving a small piece of his presence behind. Now, concerning this train, the Oxnard Courier wrote, "The car Emmanuel is a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, to lead lost souls wandering in darkness to the feet of the Lord." The fervor for this train was so great that they didn't have room to fit everyone in. And today, absolutely nothing has changed. People are hungry for the gospel. Today, people are wandering around in darkness, yearning for someone to show them the light, to show them a way out of the wilderness to the land of God's promise. Emmanuel radiated this light to those who were seeking it. And today, its light has not waned. It stands in the open air here, under a simple shelter, braving the harsh winters of this country, and serving as a reminder to us of how the courage, and perseverance, and faithfulness of a few people change the lives of many. So dream with me for a little bit. What if each of us imagined without restraint? What impact could our small actions have 100 years from now?
Neat.
Wow, that's cool.
Wow,
Yes.
what a great little
Yes,
video.
good point,
too.
Yeah.
I think
Oh.
one of the things that, oops, I lost you. Where'd you go?
We're here.
We're still here.
I slid my mouse and y'all flipped off the screen. I'm like, ah!
That's what I felt.
It was only that easy in real life.
Just,
You know, we have a rail car here in
A lot of
Pueblo.
opportunity there.
We have a rail car here in Pueblo by our steel mill museum. That was one that was it was for it was kind of like a hospital car, but it's the same length as that, and I can, you know, once you've been in that, you can certainly see how this could have been just like that same one. And in the back, it's got a kitchen and everything. So if you haven't been out to see that out by the Steelworks Museum, you need to go and see it. You'll get a better idea what this must have been like. I had no idea they had chapel cars.
Hospital
And I'm sure
cars.
for the
Ooh.
miners.
Yeah.
This could spawn another book idea.
Yes. Yeah. Come to Pueblo. Come to Pueblo, and we'll show you a whole bunch of stuff for book ideas.
You know, it was interesting because you're in Pueblo. And by the way, anybody watching online and joining us later on, this video will live on like that car does. We'll have it available for people to view if they weren't able to come in person or they weren't able to come today. But by the way, if you are watching now or later, the Greatest Gifted Scripture Supply Store in Pueblo, Colorado is our host for this online book club. And they have become such dear friends to me that I've started thinking of when can I go visit.
We would love that.
Yeah.
I really have. I'm like, when will this fit into my life? I need to meet these people in person. And it's funny because, you know, you hear all of these different ideas that, oh, you know, online friends aren't real, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is they are and they can be if you can do this where you connect with realism without all the hype and all the shenanigans that's going on. When you can connect deeply with real people, it's pretty special, you know. And I've really enjoyed it. So, but I was doing some research for the book I'm currently writing, and I have to tell you this because this is all about Pueblo. Not only might you have a train car that Angie needs to see,
Yes.
you have a museum there that has things in it from the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. And
Yes.
so that kind of blew my mind too. And I thought, oh, this is so fun. So I was doing some research yesterday during the challenge that Gina and I were doing, our hourly challenges. And for those of you that weren't with us before we went live, Gina Wellborn is another author in this Lassoed by Marriage romance collection, but she's also an author in the next collection that I'm in from Barber Publishing, which is called Blue Ribbon Brides. And our characters go to fairs, whether they're a fair in the state, the county, and mine happens to be the true fact that Montana women went to the Chicago World's Fair. Well, so Gina and I are doing this hour-long writing challenge, and we're texting saying, ready, set, go. And then you just have to focus on writing. Well, both of us at various times through the last couple days while we were doing this, and we did it one day for like 6 hours, and another day I think we did it for like 8 hours, you know, and we're going to do it tonight for about 3 hours. Both of us screeched to a halt at different hours, realizing that we needed more research before we could continue writing. One of those hours, I had to do some research on the Lady Justice statue that the Montana contingent had created, 12 foot tall on a 3 foot tall. It was called a plinth, but a gold base, and it was pure gold with a 5'10" pure silver statue, and she was mounted on this globe with an eagle. You know, oh my goodness, it was quite the statue. All of a sudden, I ran across, as I'm trying to get a little bit of the detail, how many ounces of gold, how much did it weigh, how tall was it, these kinds of things, because my hero is actually giving a talk about it in the book.
Wow.
The comedy for me was that I researched, I just did a Google search because I knew if I did that, I'd come up with the right link that I had found of a book that was written in 1895 and another was written in 1898 that I'd read. I couldn't remember the ounce number. Well, then I run across this statue that was sent over by the people of Colorado for the Chicago World's Fair, and it was called the Silver Queen. The Silver Queen. My mind, of course, goes, oh, that's not the right name for Lady Justice. And I click in, and doggone it, it's another statue.
Yes, and it was here in Pueblo.
Yeah,
Finally.
and there's well, it was supposed to be housed in your museum there, and somehow she disappeared. So there's this great mystery of the mystic Silver Queen that's supposed to be housed in Pueblo. But what you do have is what's called a casket. Another use of the word casket that I've never heard before. Of course, I'm not into metalworks, but
For the Colorado Mineral Palace.
yes, exactly. And I'm like, wow, that's brand new history to me. And so it was, yeah. So I stumbled all across that yesterday, and it was all about, you know, articles that were coming out of Pueblo, and it was like, oh man, I got to tell them tomorrow.
Yes. We have.
I'll
You need
send
to
you.
come here and do some research.
I'll send you some information
State
because I
fair
have pictures
in
and everything of
August?
it. So I'll send it to
I
you.
love that because I'll use
Colorado,
it in the,
Colorado State Fair is in August.
in what's that?
The Colorado State Fair is in Pueblo in August.
You know, I went to the Colorado State Fair when I was 12 years old, and I did. That was my first state fair, and my favorite memory, which is, you know, you do have to visit Pueblo, and if you visit Pueblo, you have to go visit the greatest gift in scripture supply store there. But then,
Yeah, okay, get that in there.
Yeah.
but then go to the Colorado State Fair, and the Dairy Association there has had the coldest milk I had ever drank in my life, and it was probably the hottest day of the summer or something that while I was there too, and dehydrated, sunstroke, the works, and they gave me this ice cold glass of freshly milked from the cow milk, and I kid you not, to this day I have visions of going back and getting another glass of milk.
One of the most popular attractions at the fair is that you can milk Bessie or Bossy or whoever is there that day. And I actually had the courage finally about 2 years ago to milk a cow. So I get to milk my first cow.
When I was a kid, that was just work.
I never had the courage to do it because I was a city girl, so never did that, and it was fun.
I think the experience, it's the experience of what other people do, the curiosity, having fun with it, just like these rail cars. How did they really live? What do they really do? That sense of understanding another person from not only, you know, getting to know them like talking like this, but experiencing their livelihood. I think it's so much fun to go into, like, I'm dying to go see this hospital car now, but, you know, stepping into these living history museums. And I'm excited to invite you all, I guess, coming up in the near future, you know, there's going to be some living history museums up here more in the Pacific Northwest. I was just at the Daughters of the American Revolution meeting. There's a chapter here called the Bitterroot, and I'm newly joining, newly qualified, but have to have the paperwork finished. And they said, one of the gals there, I'm still not used to all the different officer titles, but I think she's called the Regent, and she mentioned growing up in Fort Shaw. And Fort Shaw is working toward having a living history museum. So there's a lot of ways to experience history that just brings it so to life. And milking a cow is one of them. You know, in junior high, we took them, they were homeschooling, and I took them with the homeschool group to a dairy down the Bitterroot. And that means going south here down a literal valley, but it's a very, very wide, large valley of the Rocky Mountains, and it's called the Bitterroot. And there's a big dairy down there, and it's a major production, and they take you in and you tour and you get to see the cows, you know, getting milked with machinery, and, you know, learn all of that stuff, and then walk through and understand how milk is processed and sent off, and cheese is made and stuff. You know, it's a great thing to do with kids. But again, my little author's mind is ticking away. How can I
You can make a book out of that.
So
I think that's one of the neatest things for me in these stories is bringing those people's experiences to us. And when you were talking about the chapel car, and as we got to view it on the screen, I was remembering back how the character was walking around and just sliding her hand along things, and how he was describing it, that it has the little ledge so the dishes don't come off and things like that. And just those little details, for those of us that have never experienced anything like that, were really crucial. And that was, it was neat how she brought those to life.
I agree. I think she is, Ross Zediker is who the she we're talking about. And her book is titled Railroaded into Love. And she has a really great talent for putting in the senses into her scenes.
Yes.
I think exactly what you're talking about. What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it sound like? And you can put those things into the scenes. That's, I think, when the story starts to leap off the page. And then you layer in, I think she does really well, layering in the emotions and responses of the character. And I think that's a really fun way as well. What else popped out to all of you?
The thing that captured my attention was what you often see in abusive relationships. Molly was terribly abused by her brother, who sold her basically to that saloon, or lost her in a card game. And yet she felt such a large attachment to him and such loyalty to him. And I thought, boy, that's what happens in those kinds of relationships.
It is. I don't know if I'm sure you do. You remember what happened with Patricia Hearst. And
Yes.
that was one of the first times that they really dedicated the concept of the Stockholm Syndrome to somebody who had been taken and not only hostage, but then bonded to her captors. And the children, people who are abused, experience this. And I think the abusers are very, I think they're either sociopathic or they're pathological in some way, but they're very talented at manipulation and at getting that sense of loyalty out of their victim. And when you're doing lighter stories or shorter stories like this, it's tough to be able to go in deep enough to have that kind of a realization that you had. And I love hearing the male point of view that you captured that concept in this short story.
Well, I was a prison chaplain for a long time and ran into a lot of that.
Oh, wow. Uh-oh. This is another book.
Story.
Well, I'll tell you one quick one. You mentioned something about baptizing and not always having facilities.
Yeah.
In the maximum security prison I was in, they had no facilities for baptism. And people would want to be baptized when they made their commitments. And so we did what we could. They just bring a Dixie cup with water and we dump it on their head and baptize them. They called me the Dixie cup baptizer.
Now there's a title for a story.
Yeah, make a story out of that one.
That is a great story. And I don't know, there's a couple of different prison ministries that, I probably know about 3 of them, but, fiddle, now I'm Carol Kent. That's who I'm thinking of. She tells the story, and she came to more, I don't want to say relevance, but recognition in our country as a speaker and a writer, because she wrote the story of her son being jailed for murder. And so she wrote the book called I Lay My Isaac Down. And I just heard her speak at the Mount Hermon Christian Writers Conference. And again, I'm going to plug that one, because if you want to write, that is a phenomenal conference to go to. So much teaching. You'll come out exhausted, but filled. And while she was speaking, she made a revelation in her final talk, and she said, I don't know. She said, I want my son to get out of prison. And just the snippet story is that he married a woman who had been married to an abuser, and they were divorced, and he was still, going after her. And after a year or two, I don't remember the exact timeline because obviously it's not my story, but he ended up murdering this abuser of his wife and then being sent to jail for life with no option of parole. And
like that, yeah.
huh?
I ran into several that were in there for life in prison for murder, and you hear the story and you almost feel like that was justified.
Yeah, it makes it really difficult, especially when we see some of these movies like Taken or, some of these others that are just really full of intensity. And it draws you to the concept of what would I do if it were me,
Yeah.
And there's times when you don't feel like maybe you are being protected or supported, whether it's through other family or law enforcement, or this person's not going to stop. What do you do? And I think what's amazing about prison ministry, and the same thing with chapel car ministry, the same thing with all of this is you're taking the word of God to the lost. But what Carol Kent said, and it really struck me, if this had not happened, and he was her only son, by the way, if this had not happened to my son, I would not have entered into prison ministry. If my son were released, I ask myself, would I want to continue prison ministry? And she said, I cannot honestly tell you what I would do. And so when I think about that, and I think about the hard times we experience, and I think about the characters that Ross Zediker wrote, what would we do in that same situation? And I think fiction gives us the opportunity to explore that. And I think there's a whole variety of fiction. There's heart pounding, there's, thriller, there's horror, there's action, there's love stories, there's, so many opportunities to experience other people's possibilities. What would happen to me if I lived out that story? And yet you can do it on the page. And I think understanding that Christian fiction has this unique angle on it where we can find redemption and hope, even when sometimes we can't change the circumstance or the behavior of someone else or the outcome, as in Carol Kent's experience with her son. She can't change that outcome. She doesn't have control over it. And as an author, when I self-publish a book, when many of us do both self-publishing and traditional publishing, depending on the book and the story and the why. And when I self-publish a book, I know the marketing results. I can tell you what's happening and if I need to change direction, do something different. But when I hand away that story to a traditional publisher, I cannot see the results until sometimes 6 to 12 months later, because they don't tend to share the response or the numbers. They don't, for whatever reason. Sometimes they don't have the manpower to do it. Sometimes they don't want other companies to know what's going on. But we have no control once we let go of that story. And I think you put so much blood, sweat, and tears into something that you're creating, and you have to release control. And with something as simple as your work, how close that is to you. But what if it was your son? What if it was someone you had to forgive, like your brother? And I truly personally understand that. So I think this is something that Rose has done very well in her story, is to depict that concept for us in fiction.
Yes.
Other thoughts?
Maybe you want to get on a chapel car on the railroad, maybe do it for a year or two.
It made you want to do that?
Oh, I found it very attractive. I thought the idea of going to places where I hadn't been and bringing the gospel to people who didn't have an opportunity and might really appreciate the opportunity. They wouldn't be just taking it for granted. I thought that'd be great. Very adventurous.
I wonder if we could convince a railroad company to let us do something like that.
good luck with that, yeah.
Yeah,
Not now.
we'll call Amtrak.
Yeah.
Hey, Amtrak, I'd like to be a chaplain on one of your railroads. One that doesn't have accidents.
Maybe like RVing now, you know. I think a current day thing that would be an equivalent might be being an RV chaplain, you know, but you carry your house with you. That would be really interesting.
I knew someone that did that. They would go to the campgrounds and then in the summertime, and they'd be a chaplain at that campground.
Yeah. And I know that some of that exists. I know they have regular talks and things like that. I know some of that exists, but yeah. Wow, I have an RV. I think I'd better figure that one out, huh?
Yeah.
You guys are giving me too many story ideas. Let me show you a little bit about Ross Zediker's blog, so you can learn a little bit more about her and about the books that she does. So, and I think it's appropriately titled "Don't Quit the Day Job," and I think she did that because guess what? That's what she does. Let's see here. There we go. How's that? Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So she says, my hope is to post tips for writers who hold down a full-time job while following their dreams of publication. I hope you'll join me on this journey. And then on her front page of her blog, you can see that she was a 2014 finalist for the National Reader's Choice Award, which is pretty cool. And Arita, 2015 award nominee as well for her book Widow's Suitor, and that came out from Heartsong. And then she's got The Lassoed by Marriage. She says she's working on a new project and keeping up with all sorts of ideas for different projects. Geez, do we know what that's like? Just from our talk today. So she has quite a few different fun things, like her book Reclaiming the Cowboy's Heart. Look at that Ferris wheel. Love it. Photo Love. And remember, she's a South Dakota girl, so that's pretty cool. She's also had the 2014 Booksellers Best Award finalist. She's finalists a lot of really prestigious contests. That's pretty cool.
Angie, what is Rita?
The Rita is the Romance Writers of America has a published author's Best Book of the Year award type of thing. And the Rita includes several different categories, from short to long, contemporaries and historicals, and they include novellas, and there's a wide range of categories. And inspirational is one of the categories. And I wish we could have them drill down inspirational, you know, contemporary, inspirational, historical, inspirational novella. But the better contest for inspirational, then there's several others in addition to that. So that would be like American Christian Fiction Writers for Published Authors has the Carroll Awards. The Blue has an award. And so, you know, quite a few of the major conferences have awards. But the Rita belongs to the greater romance genre. So it will include awards that have to do with more than just inspirational. So, and that's about what I'll say.
Thank you.
Anyway. So, Sweet on the Cowgirl, historical romance. The Widow's Suitor, historical romance. She has Wedding on the Rocks, which is contemporary romance. So there's a lot of fun books. You can follow her on this blog so that you get her blog posts that she writes right into your email, which you can do with pretty much all of us. There's very rarely going to be a writer that doesn't have a website or a blog, so it's pretty nice to find them, and you find a lot of personality there, which is fun. So, yeah, and I don't think she has any additional pages. Let me see, though, if I can find if she has a website. let's find her on Facebook. Ta-da!
There she is.
I was sure I had liked her on Facebook. Let's let it finish loading. But notice what you can do right here. You can like the page for the author. And then you can see more pages of people that either are similar or in that same arena, which is nice. And then she also is on Twitter, and her Twitter handle is @SDAuthor. Bet you don't know what that stands for.
South Dakota.
Ta-da! So on here, she posts regularly, it looks like, as well. Some fun little things. And there we go. We can see even what her siblings look like. Oh, she got to see Jersey Boys. So, I mean, just you can see some of their interests and all those different things when you find your favorite author on Facebook. So,
Very cute.
yeah, and it's fun. So, anyway, this is the website for the Chapel Car Manual where I found the video. And I will click that link for you and post it down here. And that way, if there's anyone following, oh, there are people following online, I see them. So that they can actually click to that link and see it themselves as well. Then I think I'm pretty much at the end of what I had to share. What questions or thoughts would you like to share?
I really enjoyed the whole series, and I enjoy you very much. Thank you for everything that you've added to it, because sometimes you've added pieces that we wouldn't have expected, and it's opened up whole new worlds for us too. So it's been very nice for you to find those little things on the internet and show them to us as a little bit of extra, rather than just talking to the author. And so it's been great. I really appreciate it. It's been fun. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yes.
It's been really fun for me, and putting this together, and then actually, oh, I might tear up. Actually write, this is our last episode when I went on social media and stuff like that. It actually hurt.
Oh,
So I have just loved being with you, and I know every one of the authors has as well. And I feel like I have new friends, and I feel like my authors have new friends, and that we have not only enjoyed having you as readers, which thank you. Thank you for reading what we write, because this is honestly, it's the most, I think I might have mentioned it before, but it's the most intimate you can be with someone when you're really in their head. And you're in my head in a story, but then I get to be in yours when you read it. So it's really, it's an honor to do that and to be involved in that with you. So I think we create the story together when we co-share the imaginings of that story.
it's been also fun, I think, to learn how you write a story. I mean, what you think about, and the things that spark an interest for you, and how you put it all together. And that's fun. I'm not sure I would ever want to be an author, but it's interesting to see how you do it, and I have more of appreciation for authors now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really a compliment. And I know sometimes it can be really frustrating to our spouses, because very rarely. And my husband came home last night. He was gone for a couple of days. And the oddity was, the reason that Gina and I did this challenge, that she joined me, was, and we didn't know it till we were in it, as we were texting, her husband was also gone for 2 days.
Oh,
So Monday and Tuesday, both of our husbands were out of town for training or business or whatever. And we were left to our own devices. And that can be very dangerous with an author. It did work out well, but the poor guy, you know, he'd call me to check in and things like this. And Gina's husband was doing the same thing at checking in. And they're like, "You're doing what?" You know? And then, you know, they came home and my husband's like, "Okay, so are you done writing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but because we were doing these challenges, I didn't get any of my business side of stuff." So last night, he's watching TV, and instead of spending as much time with him as I'd have liked, I did spend a little bit, but after that, I got to work on all of the business side of things that had to be done. And unfortunately, that included like website updates and all of those tactical, not so, glamorous things of making sure that you update your website, update your computer, update your, plugins and all this stuff so you don't get hacked. Oh my gosh. But thank you so much. Yeah. Any other thoughts or ideas or anything that you would like to say?
Well,
Looking forward to another one.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, we'll have to,
That's right.
you and I will have to talk about if we can work something else with another one of these, because I really liked the series too. This was a lot of fun for me. And as you called them, the working person's book, I really like that, because for me, I run my own business, I run a Bible study, I have a lot of things going on, but this is something that was bite-sized and still really enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I think it's fun too when you have a chance to visit with other people about what you're doing. There's something, I don't know, it makes it not just richer, but I don't even know the right word. See, this is where I would jump from the thesaurus into my writing. There's a level of satisfaction though when you can talk about what you're doing and what you're reading and experiencing, because reading a book, whether it's the series stories like this or even nonfiction, fiction, whatever, you're immersed in it and you're in that intimate place. And what do we want to do but share the intimacy of our lives with other people, and whether it's in friendship, relationship, whatever it is. And I had a great day today. I did this, and it's more fun when you're reading a story because you're experiencing it, you're living it, when you can share that life that you just experienced with somebody else. So I really encourage book clubs.
Yeah.
Well, and what's fun for me is always to see how God works. And through almost every one of these, almost without exception, something in the next couple of days will come up here at the store or in Bible study or something like that I can utilize, either something from the story or something that one of you all said, or something that you shared with us, Angie, that makes that point, or that's the right scripture or the right verse or the right story from the Bible. And it's been amazing how often that has happened throughout this little series. So I love how God works. Very cool.
Well, I know the Blue Ribbon Brides, Gina and I are both in. Let me see if I can find that book cover for you really quick. But the Blue Ribbon Brides is, I have it on Pinterest.
Is that in November?
Yeah, and it moved back. That's the one I thought was coming out in January, and then all of a sudden it ended up being November, and I'm hoping I have to talk with the publisher, because I don't know if they're going to be presenting it at ICRS or not. And because it's been so, I imagine they are, but I don't know if they're going to be doing the signed free copies or anything like that. So I need to talk to them and ask them that. But kind of a comedy moment for me, I'm going to share my screen if you don't mind, is that I found out, through Gina, when Gina was visiting with us, and it just surprised me. But I'm going to share with you, here we go, my Pinterest. You're getting a sneak peek because I haven't released this live yet. This is my 7 Metals and a Bride board that I've been building for Pinterest as I'm researching and finding things. And it's the Blue Ribbon Brides book, the collection. And I imagine my hero to look like Colin O'Donoghue, and Once Upon a Time, because I needed him to look, historically romantic and kind of be an interesting person like that. This gal right here, Little Egypt, she she danced in, they called it the Plaisance Midway, and it was a mile-long entertainment area at the World's Fair. And so she danced the belly dance, and it was quite risque at that time to do a belly dance, and just doing some of the maps and this kind of thing that and the fans, because it was so hot. There's of course no air conditioning. Just some of the things that were inspiring me, to write the story. I thought I had the book cover on here. Of course I don't. So anyway, that is the book that I'm working on right now, and hopefully it will. Let's see if I can find it in here for you. 7 Nose and a Bride. Can you see all the different books I have going? No idea, huh? Okay, so here we go. And is this it? Nope. Dang nabbit. Okay, well, evidently I know it's there. I just can't find it that quickly.
Well, your book is going to be the first thing on my Christmas list then if it comes out in November.
Oh,
There you
wow. Made me
holidays. My mom comes in at the holidays, and we call her the greatest gift wrapper. She wraps, because we still do gift wrapping for free. So.
Spectacular. Okay, here, I found it. But I don't want to show this website. So, oh, no. I have an idea. Let me see if this will work. Okay, hold on. I get wild hair ideas sometimes, and my husband is just like, "Where did you come up with that?" I don't know. Okay. Yeah. I can do this.
You have it. Snoring during church.
Your husband does that too?
No. Sorry, we're having a side conversation.
Yeah. Shh, you didn't hear that from me. I didn't say that. Never, never. Okay. Open. There we go. This idea is definitely going to work.
Can you get on the big screen?
Yep. Ta-da! Did that work?
Oh,
Oh,
I like that.
yeah.
Do you know what I did? I went and I did I have a MacBook, and so I went and I did a screenshot of it on another website. My photo. Yay!
Nice.
So yeah, the one thing that's kind of comical is, I think it was Gina, but one of the gals, we created a secret group on Facebook so that we could kind of discuss minor things, which was really nice because the other groups the other ones that I've belonged to haven't always done that. And so like when we did, Lassoed by Marriage, we didn't really start talking about anything till the very end, and then it was more marking. So what was really fun with Gina and Cynthia Hickey and I think I remember Carrie, there's a couple of other authors, and they're like, let's do this group and visit about our books ahead of time. And I'm like, okay. One of the gals said, look they put peaches on the cover. And so another one said, okay, everybody work peaches into your book. And peaches. No, I mean, we're talking, trains and Ferris wheels and the gold and silver in my book. We're not really talking peaches. So, you're gonna be a little fascinated to see how everybody works a jar.
See how you work that in, yeah.
That's neat.
I'm gonna be fascinated to see that because that has to happen this week.
I kind of wondered that when you're doing a collection like this, how do you avoid from writing the same story? if there's 9 stories and you don't know what the other person's writing about, how do you avoid that? So that makes sense if you can talk about it a little bit ahead of time.
Well, we don't always know any of that. When we turn in our story idea to Barber and they're going to put it together in a collection like this, often they pick the stories so there's enough difference and variety in them. And we have some others that, like my agent, Daniela Hancock Murray, she is putting together a bunch of different authors who have a variety of stories. And then when she's doing that, we have the chance to talk about it in advance and present as many of the 9 authors for that collection as possible. But
Nice.
yeah, but Barber doesn't have to take all 9 of us if they don't want to. They can say, you know, we love this story concept and we're going to contract 4 or 5 of these, but we have some waiting in the wings that have a better idea, or are maybe another thing they like to do is have what they call a lead author. You know, they choose a lead author for the group. And so, like in our case, it was Mary Keneally. And in the case of the Blue Ribbon Brides, Cynthia and Gina were actually the ones who came up with the idea, and so they were given a co-lead author position on the title. So you see their names are a little bit bigger.
Right.
So it's fun to be able to talk with them in advance, because then you can work in something unusual, like a jar of peaches that floats through every story somehow. And then it makes sense why that would be on the cover, because when they chose it, not one of us had a jar of peaches. So we're talking about this behind the scenes, and we're like, the blue ribbon works for the title, but they couldn't come up with a thematic thing, so they just chose the generic thing, and then we're all scrambling, going, we can do this. So I think I know how I'm going to do it, but I don't want to write myself into a corner, so that's probably coming in tonight's challenge with Gina, because I have to remind her that she challenged us all to do that.
Well, we'll be watching for how you do that.
Yeah. Where's the jar of peaches? What is that? What is that character that everybody's always, where's
The beef. Where's the beef? Yeah.
Yeah, where's Waldo? And you have those.
Where's Waldo? Yeah.
You know what? Come out with adult coloring books with Where's Waldo.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Angie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been
Yeah,
We have really
great.
enjoyed this.
something to look forward to.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you. I
you.
really enjoyed it too, and I look forward to doing this again. And Heather, I will visit with you in the very near future.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.